Hello, and welcome to Making Creativity Pay, the podcast where we talk to people in creative industries about how they promote and market their work. I'm Dan Barnett, and on this episode I speak to Lorna Rose Treen and Jonathan Oldfield about a range of subjects, including their Radio 4 show Time of the Week, which you can currently catch up with on BBC Sounds, as well as their experiences with character comedy, drama and improvisation, as well as discussing their experiences at the Edinburgh Fringe and Lorna's experience of winning Dave's Best Joke of the Fringe last year, and the ensuing reaction to that news where it was described in The Sun as the death of comedy. I started by asking them to give a brief introduction about themselves.
My name is Jonathan. I am a performer, a writer and a director. I work across live work, specialising mostly in character comedy, but I'm at my happiest when I'm working in things that are both funny and also not funny. I've really fucked this.
Why
don't you describe me? Because I'll find that a lot less intimidating. Yeah, let's do it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jonathan is a actor, writer, director, comic. Is that right?
Yeah.
He is properly multi-genre, so he works very spread out. He teaches a character comedy course at Soho Theatre. He directed my character comedy show. He co-created and wrote on and was in Time of the Week, our radio show. And you do like quite serious theatre, like you're in a play with the new diorama at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But you also do like your own sort of solo storytelling kind of comedy shows. Genre really doesn't matter to you at all. It's kind of what matters is kind of your approach in whatever medium that you're working on, really.
Yeah, nice.
Is that right?
Yeah, that was great. This is Lorna. Lorna is much easier than me. Lorna is a character comedian. She's a performer and a writer, and her show Skin Pigeon which I directed, was the third best show the third best comedy show of last year, according to the Telegraph. And Lorna specialises in short form character comedy that I would say sort of works a lot with parody, with genre. She is co-creator of the Time of the Week show that we are talking about probably today, the radio show, and also
and I act.
And you also act. You act
and do social media
and I would say that you're similar to me. Genre doesn't matter to you so much, but you are much more focused on finding the funniest in everything.
So as we record this, I think episode 2 of your show, Time of the Week, has just gone out. How have you found the process, and how do you get the show on Radio 4?
2 years ago, I won a competition called Funny Women, and I won both the stage award and the Comedy Shorts award for a video that I made by myself. And I think that sort of just rocketed me into the industry, because I the thing that producers are always looking for is a demonstration of how you can do live work and how that live work can be translated onto screen. So I kind of managed to demonstrate that I could do both, which was really cool. I didn't really realise that's what I was doing. I was just entering everything. I entered other categories that I did not place in. And then at the same time, I did some like TikTok stuff where I was making some parody videos of Liz Truss. Like she was a CBBC cartoon, and they were doing really, really well. So it was just kind of like a cocktail of like me throwing all of my eggs in loads of baskets and then some of them coming up at the same time. So off the back of that, I met with a lot of production companies and got into development with my characters for my debut show with one production company, and then into development with some other companies. And this one particular company had a dedicated audio person he's our producer, Ben Walker. And he was like, out of everyone that we met, he was the only person that was like, I want to make radio, and I think there's real merit to radio, and led with that. And because I used to work at Woman's Hour when I left university, I've always sat on this idea about, I just thought it would be a really good place for female character comedians, and a really good spot for like being almost like leaning into the fact that it's about women, to kind of be able to write stupid, silly stuff that's not actually about women. It's just funny.
I think we also we have always wanted to make something for radio. We sort of are both fans of Radio 4, Radio 2, Radio 1, Radio 5. Radio 6. We're sort of fans of BBC Radio, but we're also, I would say, like critical of some of the work that's been on there before. And so we've always really wanted to make something for radio in our own way and with our own voice as strongly as possible.
We really wanted to make some radio comedy that we would really like to listen to, because we still listen to like all of Chris Morris's stuff, and like and Hitchhikers, like we go back as far as then to find stuff that we really, really like. That's not saying that there hasn't been anything recently that we don't like.
Yeah,
there's lots. But yeah, so then we were it was kind of amazing. Julia Mackenzie commissioned the radio show like before it even debuted.
We sort of first had meetings about it in 2022. We sort of got commissioned mid-2023 before we went up to Fringe.
We got commissioned in June
2023.
Yeah, so this time last year, really.
And then the Fringe happened, which then went very well. But we sort of were going into Fringe knowing that we had this radio show already, which I think took a lot of pressure off of that debut. And then we've been working since the end of 2023 through most of 2024 on the show, basically.
Yeah, quite an intense couple of months of writing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I mean, with a show on the BBC, how does it kind of work? You know, they don't just give you a stack of cash and say, get on with it. How much does it retain being your show versus being a BBC show, and the kind of, you know, in terms of casting, in terms of tone, in terms of kind of what you do with it?
So we are produced by an indie. So a lot of stuff is out for tender now. I think most things are out for tender, but then BBC Studios make their own stuff as well. So we're not produced by BBC Studios. We're produced by a production company called DLT, which is where Ben Walker works for. But Ben Walker used to work for the BBC, so he knows that space really, really well. You know what? They've been really hands off. Julia has given notes which were like absolutely outstanding.
Really helpful notes.
Really helpful. And I really don't feel like she's cared about what's going on, but she really hasn't tried to influence the tone at all. She really wants what we think is funny.
We've also been really lucky in that our producer Ben has been like, I would say he's very artist focused. So we had quite strong ideas about what we wanted for tone, for what we wanted for casting, for what we wanted for ideas, and like quite a lot of our fun, I would say, as comedians comes from like, can we get away with doing this? Can we get away with doing a joke about this? Or can we get away with... So, I mean, if you've listened to the show, there's quite a few jokes about how the BBC is running out of money. And we really wanted that to be part of the tone of the show, was sort of a show on the BBC, taking the piss out of the BBC a little bit. And I think we've been very lucky in that we've mostly been hit with people going, okay, yes, why not?
Yeah.
Like,
in
let's
terms
give that
of
a go.
casting, one of the things that I think was the reason why Julia commissioned it in the first place was because our idea was always to bring loads of brand new female and non-binary talent. I think a lot of sketch shows nowadays fail because they're artificially manufactured. Thank you.
Nice.
I turned into an epithet. And they're like manufactured, and you know, people are put together. They might be the funniest people in the world, but it's like, well, they're not necessarily going to all gel. Whereas like we were like encouraged to like reach out to the people that we want to work with, and people that we've worked with lots before.
Yeah.
And like we're a real gang, which is really exciting. It feels really like they are like nurturing us. It's such a privilege. Like we had a writer's room. I can't believe we were allowed a writer's room. It was amazing. But I think that's one of the reasons why she commissioned it in the first place.
I mean, truly, like 90% of the people who are involved in the show have never been on radio before or never got involved with BBC Radio before. But it felt important to us that, like, if we were going to be allowed the privilege to kind of bring in lots of new people onto the radio, that they were truly new as well, and that they were like different voices that you maybe wouldn't normally hear on radio. For I think we definitely stem from like a feeling of if a door is open for us, that we can try and bring as many people through that door as we can with us.
And we knew as well, we kind of had the gift of, from the beginning, I mean, I love writing and my dream has always been to write for other people and myself. But like the reason why I do solo character comedy is because you've got to start by making your own stuff. And so it's easier to write for myself. But it's been such a joy to write for other people. And one of the boons of this was getting Sian Clifford to be at the star of it. We always knew we wanted someone. I was never going to be the host. It was always going to be like a big name, basically. And Julia the commissioner was amazing for that. Like, really, really got what we were going for, and like.
And Sian's just
she's outstanding in it,
and has transformed the show into something I think we couldn't even dream of. We had sort of a couple of big aims when we were making the show. One was that we wanted it to be really, really fast and packed in. So we wanted it to move really quickly. We wanted items to be short, and we wanted to force people to listen to it. And then the second aim was that we wanted somebody to accidentally click onto it and think that they were listening to a real Radio 4 show. Preferably
Woman's Hour.
Ideally Woman's Hour, so that there is a feeling of, a couple of minutes where they go, oh, this is a strange Woman's Hour item, and then they go, wait, this can't be a Woman's Hour item. And I think Sian helped with both of those things, but particularly with the tone of Radio 4. For the moment she sat in front of the microphone, she absolutely just got it and lifted it into a real close parody, which has really grounded it and made it really exciting.
And I think like our sense of humour is, it's silly and stupid. And that can often, like when so much comedy now is dominated by like personal stories and identity stuff, and like talking about like as like a queer woman, they'd be like, mind your trauma for funny, whereas like that's never been our joy. It's always been escapism and silly, and like as a queer woman, I want to be able to just do what I want, like the straight men were allowed to do. But I think we found quite a really fun way with all of my content, like my social media stuff, has always been parody as like almost like a accessible comfort blanket for the audience to let them in, and then you can take them to really silly, surreal places. And that, I think, having that like firm thing that we've got with Sian means that people kind of come into the world really easily and then are free to laugh, because people are silly and surreal and weird and stupid in their daily lives. It's just they're not used to seeing anything that isn't just a stand-up talking about their lives.
Yeah.
Yes, that parody was really important for us.
Yeah. I mean, it was actually what I was going to ask was that kind of how you balance that, for one of a phrase, sensible and silly, of, yes, it could be a real show, but then, yes, you kind of dropping things in. I mean, do you find that for different audiences, the level of seriousness has to kind of change, in that, if you have something completely absurd, only some people will be on board with it and others will kind of shy away from it.
Yeah.
And then for other people, you just need to sneak in a little bit of silly.
We have a really funny line. We had a lot of like chats about this, because we're completely on the same page with what makes us laugh, but some things are just too weird or not grounded enough. There's something about like an emotional connection. Like we decided that ghosts was too far. We were like, no ghosts. You can't interview a ghost on this show.
But you can have a woman who has swallowed her whole forearm, for example.
Yeah, so fit her whole forearm.
We created our own rules and then try to stick with those rules as much as possible.
I think it's a taste thing, though, isn't
it?
But I do believe that, like, as long as if we trust ourselves and it's tiptoeing, then you feel it when you've gone too far and you pull back. Like and sometimes we dance with like going a bit too far, but then I really want it to be believable, this sounds crazy, but like when I was younger and I used to listen to stuff, if it was too weird, I wouldn't be able to cope with it, because I'd be like, that's not believable. I want it to be possible. Like, it is possible that she could fit her whole forearm in her mouth. Like, that is possible that she like dislocated her jaw like a snake.
Yeah.
But a ghost for me is not. It's not possible.
That sort of magic realism, I guess, is where we sit with a lot of our work. This it's real, and then what if it's not? And
which is like your whole storytelling. John's whole solo show was basically about that. It was like real stories, and then he tiptoed people up to the line, and then made them
tip into
everyone wanted to believe they were real. It was really interesting.
I think it really helps to like walk people to that line of imagination and then allow them into something more absurd. But like as creatives, we've got like things that we've learnt over the years of performing and making that really help us with that. So we knew, for example, and we know that with most of the things we make, we want to try whatever characters we write for, whether it's for ourselves or for other people, that those people are trying their best and that they're trying really hard and they're taking it seriously. So you'll rarely find, if ever, in our work, characters that are being silly for the sake of being silly, or that are not taking themselves seriously or are not trying their best.
And so with the show, so you've got 4 episodes coming out in total. Do you know if there's going to be second series, further episodes? And I mean, the other question on that is it your show to take away and do as you please, or do the BBC now own either it completely or own an option on it? How does all that work?
So no news.
No news on anything.
But it's a parody of a BBC show. So
we always knew it was going to go to BBC because it couldn't really work.
It couldn't really work anywhere else.
So I think
But I mean, it could if it could.
I mean, it absolutely could. Yeah,
it would just require a change.
A bit of a change. We sort of love parodying specific places and organisations. So if it went somewhere else, it would shift a little bit, but I think the parody would just be as strong. I mean, like as an artist, as creatives, we definitely felt once we finished writing season 1, I think we definitely felt that the idea has got at least another season in it on radio.
Just endless. I mean,
like the format is like we've really carved out a language for ourselves with a format that feels like we can keep writing for it.
We come from a short form improv background. Like we met doing improv at Edinburgh Uni as part of the Improverts, which like produced some really great comedians like Maria Bamford,
Miles Jupp,
all of the Penny Dreadfuls, and all that lot, Humphrey Kerr and Tom Tuck, and that's just endless. Like every day you get up and you create characters on the spot, and there's normally like a hint of something really funny in every other character. Not everyone,
but you learn through failure. Yeah,
you learn through failure. Oh boy, do you! But it means that we're really kind of how we work. I mean, especially with Skin Pigeon, there were like 20 characters that did not make the show. We do a high turnover ideas. We really believe that no idea is a good idea, but some are worse than others and must go. So I think it helps generating, and kind of the thing with Time of the Week was like, oh, this is a show that is endless. We can endlessly create characters.
Yeah.
Again, they're short form. So we're gonna we start gently introducing arcs for Chloe, and if it goes to telly, that would be kind of a bit more of a concrete thing, a little story. But these short form characters are just as important, and just as like, I think Knowing Me, Knowing You does it really well with Alan Partridge, because you have Alan's journey in every episode, but you also have these really funny self-contained characters, and that's kind of something that we really want to preserve. So we're hoping it will run for 1 million series.
You're both very heavily around sketch and character comedy. Was there a particular reason for that, and not stand-up? Is there something about character that you particularly like, or stand-up you particularly don't?
I think the thing to say is that in a way, all stand-up is character as well, right? I think a lot of stand-ups spend a lot of years trying to hone their voice on stage and their persona on stage, and maybe don't think of it as character, but it is, And sometimes those characters are really close to you and really naturalistic, and sometimes they're really different and really far away.
And my main thing, and I think this is about you as well, that you really like to do storytelling where which I say is a bit more close to stand-up. You like to be really like there and present and chatting to an audience.
Yeah.
Whereas in my head, I'm like, my imagination is the thing that I really, really value in myself, and like playing pretend in like other worlds. I know you do as well. So I think like, if I'm going to choose a persona to be on stage, why would I choose to be a version of myself? I'm so boring. Why wouldn't I choose to pretend as like a cowboy? Like, why wouldn't, like, I'd love to that play, and that like playfulness is where I come from, and I always have, and I think always will.
I'd say that both of us are quite focused on what is the audience that's in front of you. So when it's live work in front of an audience, the stuff that makes us really excited is when things feel like larger than life and feel really ridiculous and feel like it can only happen in that room with that audience at that time. Which is why I think we get pushed to. Which is why I think we've pushed ourselves more towards characters that you wouldn't see in normal everyday life, because that's quite exciting for an audience. But equally, when we're writing for a radio show, to be able to take away the visuals and just have the audio means that we got really excited about writing a character who's had enough plastic surgery that she looks like a car, for example, or a character that's swallowed her whole forearm, because the audience that's in front of you, they can't see that character, which means that you can dream even bigger. So when we then then thinking about TV or film or whatever it is, my mind springs towards like, what is the audience that's in front of us? What's the medium that's in front of us? And how can we make that as exciting for that audience as possible?
Yeah, that's interesting.
For us, I mean, also, yeah, we met doing short form improv, and that is a format that absolutely, I mean, we were doing shows at every Fringe, every night at midnight to like a sold out crowd. And we did that for almost 4 years. So we sort of trained on, like, our training ground in that sense was quite quite raucous, quite rowdy late night Fringe crowds. And for me, like, sort of more gentle, closer to you stand up just wasn't suiting that format. Whereas something like really brash and bold and ridiculous and
but your storytelling show is really sensitive and is really gentle, and you're talking to an audience.
Yeah, but I contain multitudes, you know.
I think that's interesting. I think you are interested in that.
I definitely am, yeah. But I would say that the maybe the third element of what we're both interested in, maybe me slightly more than you, although less so, if this is not the case, but is that we are interested in things. We are interested in things that cross genre, as in things that are comedy, but also go into parody or go into theatre or go into drama. Which means that stories are quite important to us. Whereas,
especially you really, really love stories.
Yeah.
Whereas I need to be reminded sometimes that people want a narrative.
Yeah, this is true.
Because sometimes I will just tell jokes.
And that's not to say that stand-ups aren't like stand-up, you know, the sort of traditional stand-up art form is not interested in that, because it very much is. But things that like sit across genre and feel a little bit more theatrical means that your mind can open up to something more imaginative and more character focused. I mean, I would say that we don't really do sketch, we don't really do sketch comedy in the sort of traditional sketch format. We do character.
Partly because the industry is just saying sketch is dead so much. So like, we're not going to call what we do sketch. Because then people will think it's dead. So we say character comedy.
I mean, we talked about personas and character. I mean, do you see your Twitter account as a kind of character? Or is it you?
Yeah, this is something that I definitely... That's so interesting. So the more I do characters as well, like the reason why I do characters is because I think... So I went to clown school, and even with my work before that with you guys in improv, I think what we were learning was we're actually the most ourselves when we're playing at something, be that your storytelling, be that you doing characters, or like be that like, you know... just imagining. What you see that is like uniquely me is when I'm playing something. In Skin Pigeon and my new show, I really feel that with the audience. Like they see me trying to do something, and then they see me. And then in these bits between the characters is a really interesting, like, fertile ground that we've really worked. Well, not even worked on, but like, are gently kind of like nurturing, because you just want to be your most self. Like a lot of my like comedy comes from like a sense of real embarrassment, and I feel like my like clown lies in me being like embarrassed and like shown up. And the same with you. Like John did the Leicester Square sketch off final, and he came second, and he said to me, I think I looked really, really sexy and cool doing that. And then he watched back the video, and it was so embarrassing.
So embarrassing.
And the audience were like laughing consistently, but he didn't really kind of comprehend why. But in his head,
I felt like a rock star. I was wearing like a dinner jacket. And I felt really cool. But I think part of my brain knew that what's funny about this was that because I thought I looked really cool, I came across like an absolute idiot.
It was like proper genuine, like aiming for something. But yeah. This is all to say, like, I think that then when there are situations where a stand-up, you know, would really, really push their actual persona, like Twitter or something, that's really like an unknown space for me. But I've had Twitter since I was in year 11 at school. Which was only like last year.
Yeah, like a couple of years ago. Yeah.
But I kind of still use it how I did then, because that's because it's embarrassing. Although I used to be a lot more political in then, and I would say awful, embarrassing things like loving the Smiths, things like that. But which I wouldn't do now. But I kind of still play with it in the same way.
I was just gonna say, I think you've definitely got you've curated a sense for what your voice is on the different platforms.
I do a lot of jokes, like straight jokes on Twitter.
Yeah, like you've done. Yeah, I think actually, like you sort of learnt to write jokes a little bit just by blasting them out on Twitter and treating it a little bit like your rehearsal room.
I have really no shame, and but I think that's what made the TikTok a real success for me, because TikTok, you just have to vomit into the ether and not be like precious about anything, which I think is really in our blood.
Yeah.
Like really just throwing stuff out and seeing what works, and then listening to your audience basically and being like, oh, they like that, okay, I'm going to do something more like that. And then experimenting and not being afraid of failing, because it's savage. Like you put your videos into the ether and then no one watches them and you're like, oh, I guess I suck. But you can't think that. You have to separate your ego from it. Like the videos that I'm putting on Instagram now and TikTok that we've done with the whole of the cast of Time of the Week that me and John have written, with a little bit of help from Will Hughes, who also wrote on Time of the Week, and lots of the cast improvised some of the stuff as well. But that stuff is doing so well because of the learning over the past 3 years of me trying to do social media. But I think genuinely having, but basically like not being afraid of failing, or being afraid of failing, but then just like doing it anyway, running towards it.
Yeah.
Again, like putting loads of eggs in loads of baskets, I think is the tip.
Yeah, I mean, something I've kind of touched on with other guests is, you know, for me, I put a tweet, no one responds to it, who cares? But, you know, when it's closer to your job than it is mine, and you do something and it just gets tumbleweed sometimes, how do you kind of cope with it? Are you able to kind of say, well, you know, you're just throwing darts at the board, sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't? Or do you think, oh, God, does that mean people don't find me funny, or, you know, that this isn't working, or any of that kind of stuff?
I just delete it. I just delete it. If I'm like, oh, that was embarrassing of me, why should I do that? I just delete it. I have no shame. I know people will see it, and I know, and I've got loads of tweets that have got like no likes or any reception. Part of my brain with Twitter goes, the algorithm is messed up now because it's become X. But I also I know on Instagram, I haven't deleted anything in absolutely ages because they've been doing really well, but I will hide things if they didn't do so well, because I know that might be someone's first point of call to see me, and I kind of use it as like a bit like a portfolio. But I think, what about you? Why don't you tweet that much?
You know, I'm just, Twitter was never something that I like. Even when it first started, I was not really using it that much.
Because you had a life.
Because I sort of had a life, I guess. Yeah.
And friends.
And I had friends.
And
I guess.
Living abroad.
Oh, yeah. So it's just sort of not been. Whereas I think you were much more like you've been much more Twitter native since the beginning, and Instagram native. So I feel like actually it's only been in the last few years that I've started actively trying to use my social media more, and a big paradigm shift came for me where, I mean, you know, like I think for you, the social media is a branch of what you do, but it's not you know, I wouldn't say that you're like a content creator, a social media person. It's like a part of what you do. It's not the end game. Whereas you do get people where their sole focus is social media, and then as a side thing they might do some live work and they might do some TV work or whatever. Whereas I would say that your focus is much more in live and in TV and in radio.
I want to write studio sitcoms.
Yeah, you want to write studio sitcoms, and the sort of the social media is a side thing to that. I was using my social media mostly for just personal use for many, many years, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to start using it to sort of tell people what I'm up to work wise. And then I had this sort of paradigm shift, maybe like a year and a bit ago, where I got some advice where somebody said to me, oh, it's not annoying, like it's not annoying people if you tell them what you're up to. It's just keeping them up to date with what you're doing. So from a work perspective, especially with my directing, with my teaching, and with the acting and the writing, that as opposed, I think I had this really internalized thing where I'm like, it's really annoying if I keep posting about what I'm doing. I don't want to annoy people. This sort of like self-defeating thing where I'm like, whereas actually, if I think of it more like I'm just letting people know what I'm up to, and that actually not everybody's going to see every post that I do, so I need to do it a few times in order for lots of people to see it, that I'm just updating people with what my work is, then my Instagram and my social media have started to become a little bit more work focused, and I've also started to get rid of the kind of that feeling of like, oh, I don't want to annoy people, which I think you innately haven't had, because you've got a lot less shame.
Yeah. Oh, well, I have a protective thing of like as well. I couldn't think of anything more exposing than talking. I have anxiety, and I think I would feel really anxious if I was talking about my family like a stand-up does, or if I'm talking about real things in my life, because I feel like life is so confusing and complex, and when you start telling yourselves narratives and stuff and trying to have control over that, that's when I find like a real lack of actual genuine anxiety and fear. So playing pretend is like something that I really love sharing. And I made a decision earlier than you, I think, probably because this is the Instagram and TikTok stuff, to like not really put anything real out there. So like it's all real, but it's not, I don't, talk about, I'm never that personal. I mean, it's funny. On one hand, it's really, really personal because it's my imagination, but like I couldn't think of anything worse than talking about my like parents on stage.
Yeah.
I feel so like precious. So I don't view, maybe I just don't view my output on social media as, it's risky, but it's not like I'm personally going to be affected if it doesn't do so well.
Yeah. I think it's sort of mad though, because as live performers, we will spend ages like coming up with a show for an hour, put it in front of 50 to 100 people in a room somewhere, and we'll spend an hour with those people, and it will take a lot of work. And yet, with some of these videos that we've done for Time of the Week, for example, one of them was literally like blasted out in less than a half a day and was seen by over 1 million people. And so you're sort of like, oh, actually, on the one hand, 1 million people is maybe more people than I will ever reach through a lifetime of live performing. Like really, unless it goes really, really well. But unless I become Michael McIntyre, which is not one of my dreams right now.
You could do it.
But I could do it, yeah. But so on the one hand, you're like, okay, that's more people than I'll ever see, that will ever see my work as a live performer. But on the other hand, it's a very different type of viewing. It's a fleeting view. And so it's, I think it's a different relationship. The relationship that you have to a live audience is different to the relationship that you have online. But both of them come from the same root, which is like trying to remove your ego from the creation of all of those things. Trying to remove, putting your heart and soul into an idea, and then once that idea is formed, removing your ego from it and just allowing it to exist however it exists.
And listening to them, like people that just persist with the same ideas and don't get anywhere. You have to change. Like, I think that is a big thing, and I know that I massively learned that at clown school, but you also learned that through your acting training. You have, if it's not working, you just have to change. You have to be like, you know what, maybe that what I'm doing is crap, and then try something else, or maybe this is crap, and like not. I think once you start getting into that mindset, then you go over yourself a little bit. Like quite often, I tell myself like, just go over yourself, Lorna. Like, shut up. Like, so why do you care? I used to have like a real big trouble with like taking up space on stage when we did improvise as a group. I would like play like lots of nervous characters because I'd feel like there's something to do with like women and space, yada yada, and sexism. But then when I went to Gaulier, my clown teacher, Carlo Yukuki, who was amazing, he's like Philippe's assistant, said to me like, it's actually selfish to not take up space. It's selfish to actually be quiet. Your job is to give, and it's to give like, just offer, and it's actually your ego making you smaller and making me watch. He was like, when I have to watch you be shy, I'm bored, and I'm like, this is so selfish of you. Like, what are you doing? And that really reframed it in my mind of like, oh yeah, my job is to content create, be that live, be that on social media. Like, it's our job to just give, and no one's getting hurt if you give something and it's rubbish. And
like similar to that original improv training, when you're like dying on your ass at half midnight, you're sort of like, it's much easier to care less about what you're offering if you're offering loads than it is to like offer one thing and then put all of your heart and soul into that one thing, and then when that one thing, like, be that a tweet or a whole show, then as opposed to going like, let me just come up with like 15 ideas and then maybe one or two of those is going to be good. Let me pump out like, with these videos, for example, it's like, let's pump out like 20 of them, and maybe 4 or 5 of them will be okay.
It's like an approach. Izzy City as well did a comedy talk, and when I was really early on gigging, I watched it, and she said, if you're starting out stand-up, don't put 1 gig in your diary, put 4, because then it spreads the pressure. And I think you physically don't have the energy. It's why Fringe is where you can do Fringe, because any rational person would look at the Edinburgh Fringe and go, that is not manageable.
Yeah,
that is not going to happen. Like, I can't do that. But it's just day by day, and it's spread out, and you're like, well, it has to happen. It's so much you don't overwhelm yourself, I think.
That's not. It's not good advice. Don't overwhelm yourself, but don't
overcommit. Overwhelm.
Terrible advice. Let me translate that into: don't put all your eggs in one specific basket.
Yeah.
Talked to a number of people about that on the podcast. Some people have gone from anything from just doing a weekend where they were a poet and it was something they always wanted to do, and I've always thought that was kind of the most sensible, kind of get in, get out, have your fun, tick it off your list. Then through to someone doing a whole month, and people doing 1 or 2 weeks. Is there a kind of sweet spot? Because from an outside, a month seems too much. Probably 15 to 20 days is probably the ideal, but then the venues wouldn't let you do that. Do you think, because I know Lorna, you're doing a reduced showing of Skin Pigeon and a work in progress. Is there a kind of sweet spot that, if you get to choose, that you'd say, this is enough to spread you, but not too much to overwhelm you?
Yeah, I think, well, part of me thinks in for a penny, in for a pound. The reason why not many people are doing the 2-week run is because you have to pay for accommodation for the whole month anyway. You have to pay for PR anyway. You have to pay for the venue anyway. So you might as well just pay the extra like £300 and do the whole run. So like that hasn't really changed anything for debuts or for making it any more accessible, which is a real shame. I would also say 20 shows in a row is enough to buckle your knees. You did something really lovely a few years ago where you did a play a pint and a pint,
yeah.
And that was a week's run, and it was so reasonable. It was so lovely.
When we first started doing the Fringe when we were at uni, we would do 2 or 3 shows a day as students and get through it, and we were young and whatever. It does feel like a shift. I hope that a shift is coming. I think Sam Campbell won the Best Show Award 2 years ago now, and I think he only did a 2-week run of that show. So I think that sort of has started to set a precedent that shorter runs are okay to do, and that you're allowed to do shorter runs.
But financially, it doesn't really make a difference.
But financially, the Fringe is an absolute mess, and it's getting increasingly unsustainable. And when the Fringe first started out, it was a place for artists to try things with little pressure and little money, and that was the breeding ground. And I think, unfortunately, the pressure, especially for comedians, but for theatre makers as well, or poets or cabaret artists, or the whole myriad of things at the Fringe, the pressure to bring something absolutely outstanding to the Fringe is impounded because it's so expensive. So actually what you're looking at is going, am I both financially able and creatively able to invest 15 grand into this show that I think is going to be the best thing possible? Whereas what it should be is I want to go and do a week or 2 weeks or a full month of this stupid show that I would love to make. And because it's not too expensive to go up to Edinburgh, it's not too expensive to have a free Fringe venue or even the paid venues, it's not too expensive to do that I can try it, I can get an audience because there's a lovely audience there, and I can see what happens. Whereas as time has gone on and Fringe has got more expensive, actually the question that artists are mostly asking themselves nowadays is this show going to be good enough that I can afford to sink this money into? And I think that's such a shame.
I could only do work in progress this year for the second half of the Fringe because of my debut last year, and that debut I financially could not afford for that debut to not go well. So I had obviously if that had happened, well, I just had to know that going into that Fringe that I really loved my show and I couldn't do any more. I couldn't spaff the money away, basically. I was I have to do this properly. But the only reason why I could do a whip this year is because of that. So not everyone is in the position to do that. It's unaffordable. I'm paying for my whip with my 12-week run of my old show this year. That's paying for my accommodation and everything.
12 shows.
12 shows, sorry. 12 week.
Lorna's doing 12 weeks in Fringe. That's the advice: is overwork yourself, do 12 weeks, go into September.
But also the ability to sell is you have to know that you're going to sell, otherwise you're not going to make your money back. I literally would just have gone bankrupt.
Yeah.
I've already sold a lot of my whip tickets for this year, which is crazy, but that's because of last year. But comedy doesn't have the same infrastructure that theatre does, and that is just really dispiriting to see. I know because John's going up this year with a play, and the play is paying for your accommodation and paying for you to get up there, and paying for you to be there. You're getting a wage. That is unbelievable. And I speak to I remember speaking to your mum yesterday, and she was like, so is your production paying for your accommodation, to John? And John was like, yes. And then, and what about you, Lorna? And it's no, there's no infrastructure. It's all off our own work, and it is like, for me last year, like it's really hard when people ask me like whether they should do the Fringe or not, because like last year, like I had the best debut possible. I couldn't like, it changed my life, and like the work, I've made my money back through the work that I got off the back of it, and the launch was like incredible, and also the training as an artist was like phenomenal, and I would recommend that to everyone. But like it's such luck, isn't it? Like,
yeah, I feel like we can't in all conscience like ask somebody to take that gamble, and like, you know, every circumstance is different, and every artist is different, and every show is different, every debut is different, and you have to kind of look at the facts that are in front of you and go, can I do this the way that I would like to do it? And I think sadly for most artists nowadays, the answer is like no, and almost exclusively because of the money.
But then the industry still hasn't answered like
what's the alternative?
What's the alternative? Because there are still theatre venues that are telling us like, well, you need to launch yourself, you need to debut, otherwise you're not going to. Yeah, we can't book you at this comedy theatre because you haven't debuted at Fringe. And it's like, why do I need to go up to Edinburgh, to a different country?
Yeah,
the best country in the world, to be fair, and the best city in the world. But why do I need to go up there to spend loads of money so then I can have a run in London where I live? It's something needs to shift.
I think especially with the Vault Festival in London was one of the only other places that like early careers comedians and theatre makers could make work at a much cheaper price and get it seen by industry. And now that has gone, that like there truly is there's no breeding ground there now. But it's just that for me, the big disparity that I think exists is between buildings and individual artists. That buildings and venues hold on to a lot of power of programming. They hold on to a lot of power of money. They're the ones who get funded more often than individuals. And individual artists, especially post-pandemic, are absolutely flailing with very little cash, with very little opportunities, and the gap between how do individuals get into organisations and get into buildings. And historically, that answer was through the Fringe, because everybody would go up there. Venues would pay somebody to literally just go around and watch loads of shows, and then that would help you get off. But as the financial burden has increased on individuals to do the Fringe, I don't feel like organisations are doing enough to support artists outside of Fringe. And what it means is that it's only the artists who can afford to go to Fringe that are being seen. It's only the artists that can afford to go to Fringe that are being programmed, which means that like lower socioeconomic artists that exist on the margins, artists that exist outside of traditional formats are not being seen by venues, and the advice from venues is go up to the Fringe, which is just not helpful. And
like obviously we got the radio show off the back of I won Funny Women, and then I won Chortle Best Newcomer. So we didn't get the radio show off the back of Fringe, but you normally, that's the route you normally get. You have a successful Fringe and then you get a radio show. So but then the awards are in jeopardy. Funny Women is in jeopardy. And it's not at the same scale that it used to be. So it's just really unclear, and it's a question of just doing everything, which is exhausting. But then like, you know, it's really hard, isn't it? Because it's like, if you want to do it, you have to just do it. But then that's not accessible. That's not to like. I mean, I'm neurodiverse as heck, but I don't know how people with like extra needs do it, or like, I just think it's impossible for people from like a working class background. Like, it's just not. Yeah. It's something needs to change, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested. What have other people said to you about this?
I think
are they similarly?
some have done. You talked about Vault. I mean, there's still Camden Fringe. But again, which is great, because I've interviewed the people behind it on the podcast before. But again, you know, that might be, you maybe play once or twice over your run, so it's not the same as, you know, even if it's, you know, you've got Buxton, you've got Machynlleth, you've got all these other friends. So you could kind of do a circuit, but it's not the same as, you know, even a week in one place. Next 7 nights, I'm going to do it. So there seems to be a gap for a mini Fringe, maybe, where you do it more than once, but it doesn't kill you emotionally or financially.
Yeah.
Mac is amazing. I did it this year for the first time, and we went down together. It was so nice. I loved it so much. But Brighton's really good as well. We are working on an improv show that's like a true crime TV documentary. It's loads of fun, and it's all short form improvisers and character comedy. And that we did that at Brighton, and it sold out to like really quickly.
Yeah.
And it feels like Brighton people should start doing longer runs, and it's so close to London as well. It's very, but no one. Yeah, I think you're right that there needs to be someone. Another city needs to take the burden on, and also give Edinburgh a little bit of a break. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
That city is.
Obviously, now I don't know what's going to happen with the Fringe, since you killed comedy last year. I mean, how did you find that? Because I'm always interested in that kind of going viral, and I've always kind of thought you don't want to become Daily Mail famous. I think that's too much. I mean, how was all that?
The Daily Mail was so nice to us, unfortunately.
It's the Sun that
It was the Sun that was horrible. The Daily Mail, we lost our house at the time, and the Daily Mail started being like, if anyone can get them a house.
Daily Mail tried to help us get a place to live.
That was so funny. The Sun, the Sun used a photograph of me from my photo shoot, 2 I think, where I look really hot, so I was really thankful. But they didn't ask my photographer for permission, and the photographer's our friend, a very talented person called Will Hurl, who we work with quite a lot. He did the Time of the Week photos as well. I won't let anyone else photograph me. But we were like, I wonder if we can email them and invoice them. And he invoiced them, and they paid him £400. So we're going to go out on a very lavish dinner that we still haven't gone out on yet. So that makes up for a little bit. I found it very funny. I mean, it was very like, it just didn't make sense. It was really funny watching all these old men get really angry, because they were saying both it was a woke joke, but then they were also saying it was like something out of a Christmas cracker in the 50s. They were like, Tommy Cooper wants his jokes back, but also it was a really woke joke. It just didn't. It
made no sense.
It was wonderful, and it made me. It just made me laugh so much how angry people got over a joke.
There's quite a lot. What was quite funny about it is that there was quite a lot of public backlash in terms of like who chose this joke. Edinburgh comedy has gone woke, and they've chosen this stupid
woke
joke.
Judges.
But the joke is the Dave joke is I don't think I'm wrong in saying this, but correct me if I am.
You're not.
Is it's anonymized and chosen by the public. So the answer to the question who chose this joke is you, Daily Mail and Sun readers. You chose this joke as the winner.
So funny.
And
it's just because I did a pun.
Yeah.
They were upset that a woman was doing a pun, but then they would have been upset if the woman did a joke about like my boobs. Like there's just no winning.
There's no win.
But the publicity was amazing.
Lovely. They drew a gravestone which said that R.I.P. Lorna killed comedy, which has been for the last year, and I think will continue to be for the rest of my life, my phone background. So R.I.P. comedy.
That's my producer's phone background as well. Yeah. It's a great conversation starter.
Oh, big time, yeah.
I mean, when something like that happens, do you kind of think, well, I'll just let it all blow over, or do you lean into it?
I think leaning into it, but I think not leaning into it in a way of again, no shame. Like, I think it was like, oh, this is fun. What a fun game I've been dealt here. Well, also I got £2,000, so...
For the joke?
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, when it happened, the producers of the show, Country Mile, who are the best comedy producers in the world, and the best PR in the world, Gabby Gerard, and me, who was directing the show, like,
and my agent,
and your agent, we all sort of like, I think there was like a nice team around Lorna to kind of protect that. So we sort of took you off social media for a few days because there was some like truly awful,
also some
appalling
older
stuff
male
being
comedians
said.
Being like, what is this?
What is
and
this
it's
joke?
Like, shut up.
So we kind of deleted social media. Well, I became Lorna's social media manager for a couple of days and just reported and fielded the worst of the hate that was going her way. And then, but then it's that funny thing which I think everybody always says, which is then after a few days it dies down and something else happens in the world, and then it moves on
until Christmas. And then at Christmas, the Sun did the 10 worst things to happen this year, and And number 2 was Chris Pincher, and then Donald Trump's like weird dodgy stuff that was going on. And then me, I beat Chris Pincher. It was my joke.
Your joke beat it.
It was Christmas, and it was quite. It kept coming up in pub quizzes, and I kept getting people messaging me being like, "No one knew who you were," which was quite fun. It was really funny. And then of course I do the joke in my show. So I did a 13-night long run Soho show in October, and I just done last week I did a 4-night run at Soho, and every time the joke happens, you get people who are like,
Yeah, I saw you at the Comedy Store. You were part of a benefit with I think it was Darrow O'Brien and Stu Goldsmith, and you did the joke there, but you did it as a different character. Because obviously, because you only had a tiny bit of time to change.
I think it was like a week after or something, wasn't it? Yeah. So I was like, I'm gonna bloody do it.
I'm gonna milk this, yeah.
I think they wanted me to do 7 minutes, and I only had 5 minutes of material in my head, so I needed to elongate it.
Yeah, I mean, is there? I mean, you've got 1,000,001 other things, but yes, you don't want that literally on your gravestone. That I can look on.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I like in that actual set that I do, it's like 20 back-to-back puns.
Yeah,
and I don't even think it's the best pun in the. It's not the best pun in the thing. There's one joke in that set that that John wrote, and when my PR was like, "Lorna, don't tell anyone, but you've won Dave's Best of the joke of the Fringe," I was like, "Oh God, it's going to be the one joke that John's written." And she's like, "I don't know which one it is yet." And we were like, "Oh no!" Oh, God. So for like 7 hours, we were sat there like, "It's going to be what we're going to do. We're going to have to come out." Luckily, it wasn't that one.
It was just not. What was quite nice about it was that it was having conversations about that show and that character and those jokes, and consciously going, this character is a vessel for jokes that are so punny and so bad that they're funny and stupid. So what's nice about the jokes and about the character is that the character is the character that Lorna does it in is like a film noir parody. So it's very beautiful and speaking like very film noir-y, very American. And then what's coming out of her mouth are these very stupid jokes, but consciously going, we know that these are stupid jokes, and then being told by a load of Sun readers that it's a stupid joke. Was kind of made it a successful joke.
Yeah, because it was also like they thought maybe did they think that I was being like really satirical or like what did they think I was trying to do?
But I mean, yeah, how did that feel? Kind of people really lean in and really analysing the joke as if it was.
So many men would tweet me and say, "I actually think it would be better if it was," and then change the format, and it was so funny because it was like, it's quite sweet, I think, people engaging with it in that way. I mean, it's mad as well.
I mean, don't take that as an encouragement to try and improve Lorna's jokes online. Let's just be really clear about that. It's not sweet, Lorna. It's bad.
No, it is bad, but I also think it's sweet that that's what they're doing with their brain for them at those many minutes. Do you know what I mean? They could be doing worse things.
I guess so, yeah. But they are then tweeting the writer of the joke, telling the writer of the joke how to improve the writing of the joke.
Probably wouldn't do if I was a man.
Exactly, yeah.
What I find quite amazing is that I couldn't see the analytics of the joke, obviously, and how broad it was, but like on Instagram and stuff, you can see literally how many times, like how much time they've spent watching your content. So like we've just put a video up of it's called Can Women Catch or Throw, and it's like basically loads of people from Time of the Week saying stupid things about catching, and one person thinks it's fish, one person answers as if they're a dog, you make it about your mum, and it's a really stupid video. It's like 90 seconds long, and it's been up for like 20 hours, and there's been 16,000 hours of it watched. So we've stolen 16,000 hours from someone with stupidity, and I think that's kind of amazing.
That's such a joy, yeah.
Like the fact that I had so many messages from my good friends. One of my friends I shouldn't say the name of where they work, but they work at like a museum, quite a serious museum, And and he walked into the room and they were all sat around going, "It's a terrible joke. What a terrible joke. It's so bad. So, like, it's not funny. Like, what? It doesn't even make sense. Like, back in my day, these used to be funny jokes." And he walked in and he just sat down and he went, "Before you all continue, she's my best friend and she won the joke and she got £2,000 and we're not going to speak anymore about it." Which is so funny. And like it's like I've killed someone. Lots of my family have to be like, I had to stop someone before they went onto a massive rant about your joke by being like, "That's my daughter." Yeah, it's very funny. Very funny.
You said you're involved in lots of different things. John, you got your one-person show. You do various improv and that kind of stuff. Do you find that kind of the variety keeps you going rather than burns you out, or does it do both?
It definitely does both. The most difficult thing about a creative career like this is earning enough money for it to become sustainable. So like we were both very unlucky in that we started doing this properly during the pandemic, which meant that the majority of the way that we would do live work didn't work. But what it forced us to do was do lots of projects that we would never normally do, and actually look at our practice and look at the things that we are interested in doing and try lots of different ways of trying to do that. And I think that's continued post-pandemic. So we love doing lots of different projects at the same time. We love looking at doing different things in different ways. We love jumping across things. And whilst we both love that creatively, it's also an absolute necessity in order to try and earn enough money to pay our rent.
Creatively, like, for me, I won't answer for us both, but I think you're similar in this.
Yeah.
I like working on loads of different things at once because I'm never sure what something is ever, but I become quite quickly like, oh, it's not that. It's not it. I know what that's not, and that's something else. So like, that's such a confusing thing to say, but like, so I had 11 characters in Skin Pigeon, and I'd be writing for one character and I think of a joke and I'd be like, that's not for this character, but that's for another character. That's cool. So I've got another character there brewing. And the same with like treatments for scripts and stuff. Like if I think of like, John thought of this really beautiful image the other day for something, and it was like, that's not for this sitcom, but that is something that's really cool. So sometimes, I mean, it comes from like a via negativa kind of like critical way of working, which I did at clown school, and you work a little bit with, of like getting rid of what's crap and then ending up with something good by like criticizing.
But I think our brains definitely like spark ideas by working on other things. So sometimes, you know, you'll put your head into like a solo show for ages, and if you stick with it, you'll go down rabbit holes and you'll get lost. And then you'll go and like watch a film that's about something completely different, and it'll solve a problem for you by going back to it. Or you'll write something in a different way, and it'll spark some thoughts for that.
You only get burnt out I think I only get burnt out if I'm like, the rest of my life is not being looked after. It's rarely work.
Yeah.
It's rarely having loads of work on. It's normally that like precious bit of your actual life not being given time.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, it is that like sort of it is. I think I think it will be a lifetime of learning of this actually, but we are still learning like when we need to just go for a drink in a pub with friends, when we need to like go to the gym and look after ourselves and eat well, or go on a holiday, or go and see our parents, or like still trying to learn that balance of it's because it's, you know, the sort of the joy and the negative of this job. The joy is that you're working for yourself, your time is all your own, you can decide when you work. The negative is that it means you work all the time, nobody's in charge of telling you when to stop working, and it's really easy to work 7 days a week. Like
one of our best friends is Jodie Mitchell, stand-up and drag king, and we sing them so much this year because they're in Time of the Week, and they're one of the writers of Time of the Week and one of the performers. And I remember we were chatting to them the other day, and we were like, It's so nice we get to see each other all the time, and it's because we're working together.
Purely because we're working together. But trying to find that balance of work and not work is yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I'd imagine, if you were, say, writing a book, it needs to be however many words, and you've got a beginning, middle, and end. But with the kind of things you're doing, there's probably always more characters you can create. There's always more jokes you can write. It's never done.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about this a lot with all of the work that we make. That we sort of rarely say that something is done. That we sort of really what really excites us is the idea that it is constantly developing and constantly changing, especially with live work, because every time you do it, it is different. But even with Time of the Week, we approached it in that same way, that and literally until it's been broadcast on Radio 4, that everything could change. So we would write things, and then we would edit them, and then we'd record them, and then we'd edit them again, and then we'd put the episodes together. We'd swap everything around and edit them even more. Everything would constantly change until it really has to.
A deadline is a gift. We
love a deadline.
We always think as well, because we're improvisers. If there's no deadline, nothing's happening.
Yeah,
it's so. I mean, and there's little deadline. You have to set yourself little deadlines, like be that a gig or be that you're going to do Edinburgh Fringe, so you have to have these mini deadlines before.
Or I've booked a friend to come round this afternoon to watch me do something stupid. So
quite often
to get it done.
We'll text someone and be like, I'm going to send you a video in an hour of me doing a character, and you need to tell me.
You need to watch that.
Yeah. What's bad about it?
Thanks for listening. And thanks to Jonathan and Lorna for coming onto the podcast. There's more details in the show notes about what they're both up to, from the radio show to the Edinburgh Fringe and beyond. If you enjoyed this, check out some of our previous episodes where we speak to people from a variety of areas, including comedians about their fringe experiences, as well as artists in a variety of areas discussing how they try to make creativity pay.